Reporting that Iran has officially agreed to the terms of the ceasefire deal, just hours after they fired missiles at American military bases in Qatar and Iraq.
Explosions over Gaza, Iranian drones launching, Israeli Iron Dome intercepts, world leaders in emergency meetings, a Bible slowly opening to Ezekiel 38. Missiles are falling, alliances are shifting, and once again, the world is holding its breath over the Middle East. But is this just another political crisis? Or are we watching a prophecy written 2,500 years ago begin to unfold right in front of our eyes? From Iran's growing war network, to Russia's quiet alliance, to Israel's rising confidence, everything is moving. And according to Ezekiel, it's all been foretold. Iran's proxy strategy encircling the nation. To understand the danger that surrounds Israel today, we must look beyond the obvious, beyond the official state borders and diplomatic statements, and examine a strategy that has unfolded slowly, deliberately, and with chilling precision. Iran has long embraced a form of asymmetric warfare, fighting not through direct confrontation, but through carefully positioned partners. This is not theory. It's happening. In the north, Hezbollah stands entrenched along Israel's border with Lebanon, more than 150,000 rockets pointed south, forming one of the most dangerous non-state arsenals in the world. To the southwest, Gaza is home to Hamas and Islamic Jihad, groups that regularly test Israel's response time with rocket fire and riots, while digging deeper into ideological warfare and martyrdom culture. Across the Eastern Front, Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria are positioned near key Israeli access points, often shielded by civilian populations, making retaliation nearly impossible without risking wide-scale escalation. And now, from the southern desert, we see the rise of the Houthis in Yemen, launching ballistic missiles and drones that have, on multiple occasions, attempted to strike Israeli territory, demonstrating reach Iran could previously only dream of. But this isn't random. This is a doctrine of entrapment, a noose drawn tightly around Israel's borders, meant to drain its strength, spread its forces thin, and provoke a response that could justify a wider war. Iran doesn't just fund these groups, it guides them. Through ideology, arms, and shared hatred for Israel's existence, the Islamic Republic has built a multi-front system designed to overwhelm and destabilize. And what's chilling is how perfectly this modern military strategy echoes an ancient prophetic warning, one that speaks of a time when Israel would be surrounded by many peoples, caught in a trap not of its own making, but by the design of its enemies. The tightening alliance, Russia, Iran, and Turkey. When we examine today's geopolitical map, we don't just see shifting alliances, we see something strangely familiar. In the biblical book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 offers a prophetic glimpse into a coalition of nations that will one day rise against Israel. Ancient names are listed: Magog, Persia, Gomer, Togarmah, obscure to modern ears, but not to historians. Persia, of course, is modern-day Iran, a nation at the forefront of anti-Israel rhetoric, military buildup, and ideological warfare. Magog, most scholars agree, refers to lands to the far north, widely believed to align with modern Russia, a nation increasingly assertive, authoritarian, and willing to strike where global norms would hesitate. Gomer and Togarmah are often traced to regions of modern-day Turkey, a country that continues to walk a careful line between East and West, NATO and Russia, secularism and renewed Ottoman ambition. At first glance, these are very different players, different histories, different cultures, even competing agendas. But over the past decade, we have watched these differences shrink. Military exercises, arms deals, trade routes, shared hostility toward Israel and Western influence. Russia has provided Iran with drone technology and air defense systems. Iran has supplied Russia with weaponry for use in Ukraine, marking an unprecedented military collaboration. And Turkey, once a strategic Western ally, now leans increasingly toward regional leadership through religious nationalism and pan-Islamic vision. What unites these nations is not ideology, but strategic necessity. And in that necessity, Ezekiel's ancient list begins to take form. Ezekiel 38 to 39 in modern terms. The vision Ezekiel paints is both stunning in its detail and unsettling in its familiarity. He describes a time when Israel, regathered from the nations, would find itself surrounded by a vast military coalition from the north and east. This alliance would come against a land dwelling securely, without high walls or gates. But let's pause and ask, what does it mean to dwell securely? In the ancient world, cities without walls were considered confident or at peace. But in modern terms, security isn't always about physical barriers, it's about perception. And today, Israel is in a unique moment. Militarily, it's strong. Its air defense systems are unmatched. Its intelligence services are respected worldwide. Regionally, it has signed normalization deals with once hostile neighbors. There's a sense of openness, optimism, perhaps overconfidence. But internally, things are different. Protests shake the streets. Political polarization widens daily. The society is torn between secular liberalism and religious nationalism. The government is fragile. Its leaders are divided. So while the Iron Dome may guard the skies, Israel's spirit is divided and distracted. Could this be the condition Ezekiel spoke of? A time when Israel believes it is secure, only to be caught off guard? And what about Gog? Some theologians argue Gog is not a personal name, but a title, perhaps the head of a confederation, a supreme leader of this northern alliance. Others suggest Gog may be a political or military figure yet to rise, a man who will lead this coalition under a cloak of strategy, not conquest. In either case, the outline is there: a confident Israel, a unified enemy, a sudden strike, and what follows is not just war, but divine intervention, a shaking of the earth, a judgment that echoes beyond borders. Ezekiel wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was describing a future moment, one we may be inching closer to with every passing day. Syria and Lebanon, the launch pad to the north. As we trace Ezekiel's description of a northern assault, a strategic question rises to the surface. Where exactly would this invasion begin? When the prophecy speaks of enemies advancing from the north, modern geography leads us not just to Russia or Turkey, but more immediately to Syria and Lebanon. This is the northern doorstep of Israel, and it's anything but quiet. In southern Lebanon, Hezbollah, fully backed by Iran, has amassed an arsenal now estimated at over 150,000 missiles, many of them upgraded with precision guidance systems. Some are capable of reaching not just border towns, but deep into Israel's heartland. Just across the border, in southern Syria, Iranian military advisors and Quds Force operatives have quietly embedded themselves under the cover of the ongoing Syrian civil conflict. Weapons convoys regularly move through this corridor, many of which are intercepted by Israeli airstrikes, a campaign so routine it barely makes international headlines anymore. But make no mistake, this region is alive with tension. The Syrian airspace has become a chessboard of risk, with Israel launching preemptive strikes to prevent advanced missiles or drone systems from reaching Hezbollah's hands. And as these forces inch closer to Israel's borders, the prophetic warning takes on new weight. Ezekiel didn't give satellite coordinates, But his reference to the far north may not point only to distant empires, but to tactical front lines just miles away, in places where missiles are hidden in schools, tunnels weave beneath villages, and war can be launched with a single order. Cyber war, AI drones, and next-gen threats. When Ezekiel envisioned the weapons of war, shields, swords, and horses, he was speaking in the only terms his era could comprehend. But prophecy is not confined to the language of the past. It speaks through symbols that, over time, may carry new meaning. Because war in the 21st century isn't only fought on open fields, it's waged in the silence of data centers, the darkness of digital space, and the algorithms that now guide machines. Iran has been ramping up its cyber warfare programs, launching targeted attacks on Israeli water systems, banking infrastructure, and even hospital networks. In several documented incidents, Tehran's cyber units have attempted to manipulate civilian life, not with bombs, but with silent disruption. Meanwhile, AI-enhanced drone swarms are no longer science fiction. These are coordinated machines that can jam signals, evade radar, and learn from each engagement. They can strike from unexpected angles, saturate defense systems, and operate faster than human response time. Russia, with its deep experience in GPS spoofing and electronic warfare, has reportedly shared key technologies with Iran and its proxies, introducing a new layer of complexity to Middle East threats. And so we must ask, when Ezekiel wrote of weapons in the hands of invading nations, was he seeing literal iron and bronze? Or was he glimpsing something deeper? A battlefield of the future, where destruction doesn't always come from missiles, but from malware and machine intelligence? The weapons of this next war may not clang with steel, but they will cut all the same. And prophecy, it seems, is still catching up to technology. Burning weapons for 7 years. What does that mean today? In Ezekiel 39, after the great battle has ended, we encounter a strange yet vivid image. Then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out and make fires of the weapons and burn them for 7 years. Ezekiel 39:9. To ancient readers, this may have seemed like a straightforward act, gathering swords, spears, and wooden shields to use as fuel. But in our world today, the battlefield looks very different. Weapons are no longer forged from flammable wood, but composed of advanced alloys, electronics, and in some cases, radioactive or chemical material. So, how do we understand this verse in modern terms? Some scholars suggest it may point to a prolonged cleanup operation, perhaps after a tactical nuclear exchange, or the use of dirty bombs that contaminate cities and require years of environmental rehabilitation. Others propose it refers to chemical and biological warfare remnants, hazardous materials that must be burned, neutralized, or securely disposed of under international protocols. Still others interpret it more symbolically, Israel reclaiming its sovereignty by turning the weapons of its enemies into fuel, not just physically, but politically. A 7-year period of transformation, resource repurposing, and regional resetting. Whatever the case, the idea of burning enemy weapons for 7 years suddenly no longer sounds ancient. It sounds unsettlingly plausible. Because in the wake of a modern Middle East war, the aftermath may not be ceremonial. It may be toxic, both literally and geopolitically. The smoke may rise for years, not as incense, but as fallout. Israel's Iron Dome confidence, a false sense of security. Few nations in modern history have achieved what Israel has with its layered missile defense systems. Iron Dome, the most famous, has intercepted thousands of short-range rockets with astonishing accuracy. David's sling counters medium-range threats. Arrow defends against long-range ballistic missiles, even those capable of carrying nuclear payloads. Together, they form a shield over a nation the size of New Jersey. And yet, no system is invulnerable. Military analysts warn of saturation attacks, where a massive number of rockets are launched in a short time, aiming to overwhelm even the most advanced systems. Iron Dome is highly effective, but not unlimited. Its launchers need reloading. Its interceptors are costly. Its operators require time to assess threats, and coverage isn't uniform. Certain areas, particularly near the northern and southern borders, have gaps, zones where too many rockets at once could land before the system can respond. In Ezekiel's prophecy, the invasion comes not during a war-torn moment, but when Israel feels safe. Timeline of fulfillment: 1948, 1967, and today. To understand where we may be going, we must take a moment to look back and trace the turning points of a nation reborn. In 1948, against all odds and global resistance, the State of Israel was declared, reviving a people scattered for nearly 2,000 years, fulfilling a promise long thought impossible. This moment wasn't just political, it was prophetic. Then came 1967. In 6 days, Israel fought off multiple invading nations, and in the process regained control of Jerusalem, the ancient and sacred heart of the Jewish people. Again, the echoes of prophecy rang louder. But since then, the world has shifted. What was once a regional conflict has become increasingly entangled in global stakes. The Middle East is no longer a local battlefield, it's a pressure point in a world already on edge. Superpowers now stake their reputations, economies, and political will on how this region unfolds. And if we look closely, there is a rhythm. Roughly every 2 to 3 decades, the situation transforms. From independence to consolidation. From land wars to proxy militias. And now, from regional friction to global entanglement. Because if the timeline of prophecy continues, then we may be standing just one step away from the final turning point. The next trigger. What could spark it all? If the storm is gathering, then the next question is not if, but how. What could trigger the cascade of events that fulfills Ezekiel's vision? One possibility, perhaps the most obvious, is an Iranian nuclear test. After decades of warnings and sanctions, such an act would not only provoke global outrage, it could compel Israel to respond preemptively, regardless of the cost. Another flashpoint could be a surgical Israeli strike on key sites, like Damascus, long suspected of harboring advanced weapons, or Natanz, Iran's primary uranium enrichment facility. Yet the spark may not come from Iran alone. In Syria, where Russian and Israeli aircraft already share contested airspace, a single miscalculation could ignite confrontation between two nuclear-armed powers. Or perhaps it begins with instability, a sudden leadership collapse in Turkey, or violent unrest in Lebanon, allowing militias to act without political restraint. And sometimes, the most dangerous events are not deliberate, but accidental. A drone misfires. A defense system overreacts. A diplomat says too much. A line is crossed, unintentionally, yet irrevocably. That's the nature of prophecy. It isn't a calendar prediction. It doesn't name the day or the hour, but it reveals the trajectory, a path shaped by choices, tension, and the human tendency to repeat history until it breaks. We may not know what day it starts, but we're certainly close enough to feel the ground tremble. Now, this message is not meant to provoke fear, but to awaken clarity, because what we've explored isn't theory, it's the pattern that keeps repeating. A growing military buildup, a network of alliances once foretold, old enemies drawing near, and a world inching closer to decisions that cannot be undone. Ezekiel 38 and 39 were written in the dust of ancient Israel, but today, they read like the front page of tomorrow's headlines. So if a prophecy written 2,500 years ago can describe our present moment with such precision, shouldn't we be paying closer attention to what comes next? Not to panic, not to speculate wildly, but to prepare, mentally, spiritually, and historically, for what may be the most significant convergence of faith and geopolitics in our lifetime. Because the world isn't just changing, it's aligning, and the hour is late.